everybody. Welcome back to the Nerdy Neighborhood and welcome back to your Friendly Neighborhood comic show. I'm your host, Lauren, your Friendly Neighborhood Bi, and I am joined here today by an up-and-coming indie comic creator putting out their Kickstarter just recently. We've got Luke Henderson here with us. How are you, Luke?
I'm doing great.
Good. In case you guys are wondering, Luke and I are both doing this in between other life things. So if we both seem a little jittered or anything, just know it's just because it's midday. We've both still got other things, but we had to stop and talk about this phenomenal Kickstarter. And I believe it's your first one, Luke, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my first one I'm running. My second one I've been a part of.
Oh, nice. What was the other one you were a part of before?
I was part of an anthology called Corrupting the Youth. It was a collection of stories that were like
Uh-huh.
supposed to be like kid stories with really questionable morals or like kind of their stories. So like mine was about a kid who got forgotten by the Tooth Fairy, and so they wrote a complaint letter that they had their parents read for them.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I wish I'd heard about that Kickstarter when it was running because I don't think I've heard of that, but that sounds amazing. I need to find a way to get my hands on that.
It's an add-on my campaign right now. So
there we go. I love how it works out like that. That's the nice thing about Kickstarter is that you can offer these other opportunities from past. Sometimes people even offer future, but typically like stuff from the past that like it's no longer running. You can't just buy it on the store, but you can get it with the Kickstarter. So that's really cool that other anthology you're a part of would be great. But tell us more about Sparks. It's Sparks Volume 1, you say. So hoping that means there could be more volumes in the future if it does well. What's this about?
So Sparks is I chose the name Sparks because it's supposed to be kind of like those little kernels of stories that you write in the beginning of your career that will hopefully one day, burst into flame to lead to greater things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a collection of short comics. Some of them I tried to pitch to other anthologies and they didn't get selected. Some that I just wrote and had an artist draw, and that just like, I don't want this to just, be in my personal collection. I want it to be in go somewhere. So that's where Sparks came from. They're all for this volume, science fiction and fantasy stories. And they all kind of involve characters who have to kind of defy their expectations, learn to find themselves in unexpected ways. And I'm very much a very character-driven, emotional writer. So that's kind of what I try to imbue also with every story here.
That's awesome. Yeah, this cover alone is really cool. There's upon first glance, people, might go like, okay, cool, it has colors, but there's so many layers to this. Like just looking at it now, I'm like, wow, there's like 5 things here I didn't see before. What was your process in either creating the cover or having the cover made?
Well, the cover's made by Donna Black, who's just one of my favorite indie artists right now. She's a multimedia artist, so she uses like Polaroid photos and digital effects, as well as paint inks like you would see in a normal comic. But so I just love her style. She usually does kind of more horror, creepier stuff. Like that's the vibe she usually does. But this one, I just gave her the prompt. I just want it to involve fire in some way. And she knocked it out of the park. Yeah, I love this cover because the more you look at it, the more stuff you find.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's like a fire with layers underneath it, like you're like, oh, it's burning, but you're like, oh my gosh, there's that burning and there's that too.
Yeah.
It feels like kind of like an Easter egg hunt cover.
It is. And I love too that her face is hidden under there too. I didn't notice it, but now that I have, like, it's kind of become the logo for when I can't put the words in.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the concept behind, taking these sparks, these past stories that either haven't gone used or, weren't taken for other projects and still showing, hey, this is also what sparks look like. Because I think, especially with creation and, pitching stuff and all that with art or especially comics, people are like, well, this is what people want to see. This is what's in, this is what's out, or this is what works and this is what doesn't. But people forget that like sparks start somewhere. Like the greatest ideas you've ever seen, started from the smallest thing, Joe. So it's really cool to see this. You list some characters here. You've got Cleve. It looks like they're 2 sisters. where did these characters come from for you?
So that was originally a pitch for Extra Page Press's Sharp Wit and I'm blanking on the name now, but they're Sword Girls anthologies, and it didn't get chosen.
Yeah.
And I was just so disappointed because I called them like my Avengers. I had such great.
Uh-huh.
That's Janice and Lita. They're two sisters who, in their kind of galaxy far, far away world, there are two separate factions. There's the magic faction and the science faction. Janice is a part of the magic faction, so they study, the supernatural, and that's what they focus on. And then there's Lita, who's all about science, engineering, and in their story, they have both made it to the championship round of the Galaxy's exhibition, where the guilds get to show off what they can do, what they're good at, and so they're at each other head to head. And kind of the inspiration came from, honestly, my coming out as non-binary this year, because I wanted to tell a story about someone who is told that they are one thing, they chose one path, and so that's kind of what they're expected to be. But someone who finds that they are in love with a lot of things, some things that may seem contradictory, some things that may seem to be opposing forces, because that's kind of my experience too. Like, I was growing up, I was told all my life, oh, you can't do that. Those are boy things. Like, you can't ask for the Cabbage Patch doll for Christmas. That's a girl toy. And it's just always felt very limiting. So I'm kind of exploring that too a little bit within this story.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people, whether even though people have different labels and different life experiences and such, like, I think a lot of people can relate to that general, like, I've been told this is the way things are, but I can actually do other things. I can pick which or all or whatever ways you want to go. So it's cool because, obviously this seems very, LGBTQ oriented and themed. But it can apply to anybody, whether you are in that community or not. So I love just how intersectional this kind of feels.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I like to do a lot in my writing. I like to take the issues that are personal to me and that are about, my queer experience, and kind of not necessarily dumb them down, but like get them down to the core thing. So that way it is more relatable to everyone else, because I feel like that could help break down some barriers. If you can see the similarities between someone who identifies as non-binary or someone who just has always felt out of place.
Yeah, I think, like you said, break down those barriers so that people can see that these different experiences are still relatable. Like, people have different, lenses of how we experience things, but when we come together, those experiences are more similar than we think at the core.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see that an anthology like this, especially with a title like Sparks, because I think sparks are a theme in, like, human rights movements and stuff. Well, it just takes a spark to get everybody going, so that's super cool to see here. Who was the artist here on The Fire Went Out? Because while I love all the art here, this art is just so cool to me. I really like the style.
That is Nicolas Mirez. He is an Argentinian artist who I met in a Facebook group, and I was just looking for someone who could kind of go do a Sean Phillips style art, because this is a noir story, but like that was a little more colorful. And Nicholas fit the bill perfectly. And he took a lot of liberties, honestly, with the script. I had a pretty bare script with not as many panels, and he like really stretched it out and added extra things to make the pacing go even more slowly and drag out those bits of drama. So I can't speak highly enough of him. He doesn't get enough work, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really love, kind of like you said, the pacing, and it looks like again, I didn't see your scripts, obviously, but he added so much depth to every panel here. Because I think that's one thing that's really tough about how you make panels and how you design them in general, whether you're writing the script or you're actually drawing it yourself, is how do you add or detract the amount of depth you want, and how do you get in that, like, fine line?
Right. Especially because this story is kind of exploring kind of a gray area. It's basically a retelling of the myth of Prometheus, but Prometheus being a thief, like kind of a noble thief, and then Zeus being a cop who knows that this is not necessarily the right thing to do to stop him, but like it's his job.
Ooh, I really like that. I'm definitely one of those people that when I hear like, oh, it's a Greek mythology twist, I'm like, suddenly I'm interested. Gets the magnifying glass.
Yeah, I really like the myth of Prometheus because he's a character or slash a god, or a demigod who he tries to do something good for humanity, and because the gods are afraid that humanity is going to get too much power, he gets punished. So he gets punished for doing a good deed, even though he is technically stealing fire from the gods. It's
Mm-hmm.
that kind of gray area. Like he's doing stealing, which is normally thought of as bad, but he's trying to help the greater good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I like that you chose to make Zeus a cop in that situation. I think that adds some extra layers just with, current events over the last couple of years in particular.
Right. And I didn't want him to just be a Judge Dredd, type of law and order police officer. I wanted him to be a little more sympathetic, so that's why I kind of add the layers of he knows this necessarily isn't what should be done or what he wants to do, but like it's his
Mm-hmm.
job as a police officer to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of gives me like Jim Gordon vibes with Batman.
Right.
He's kind of ran with like that, especially year one, he gets a little more towards the, you know, not always the good intentions, but I think even then, it's still like, oh, he really wants to be good, but like he's kind of not doing great.
Yeah. Especially
That's
in
all.
you talking about the Frank Miller's year one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, especially in that one. Yeah, he kind of fumbles his way into doing the right thing in that story. I actually just read that recently, so that's funny that you brought that up.
Yeah, that story, not to go too much into it, but that's one of the stories that I'm told often is like a classic Batman story. You got to read it. So that's why I bought it and read it. And then I read it and I was like, this isn't a Batman story. Like he's here, but this is a Jim
Right.
Gordon story. Don't call this a Batman tale. Please stop that.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I bought it too because it's one of those classics you had to read. It was in a box set.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be like these ones inspired the new Batman movie.
Yeah, and it definitely did, but yeah, they're definitely Jim Gordon stories. Now I have a feeling Jim Gordon has a Zeus complex, but I can worry about that later.
Right.
um Out of the stories in this, not to make you pick favorites, you don't have to, but do you have a story or stories in particular that are really like kind of your babies? You're like, this one I love with everything.
Ooh, I I honestly probably have to pick the first one we talked about, Cleve. Just that one when
Mhm.
I read it, it took me a while because I was so concerned that this had to be good because it was so personal. And like I
Mhm.
finished it and I was like, I hate this. I'm not like I just like closed my laptop and walked away from it. And then when I
Yeah.
came, I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. So that one was definitely more like a baby because it was like, oh man, like
Yeah.
it has to be perfect. And the other ones I
Yeah.
well, but this one is definitely the more personal one.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with creating too, like we're harder on the things that are more personal to us. So like if I'm writing or making something and it's not super personal to me, then if I don't like it, I'll just say, "Oh, nope, don't like it," and I'll toss it and move on. I won't really get upset about it. But if I'm working on something I really love and then it doesn't turn out the way I'm hoping or whatever, then I'll really beat myself up about it, kind of like you're talking about, like, oh my God, this is terrible. I gotta shut the laptop. I gotta like leave for the day.
Right. And it didn't help too that I've got a great team on this one. Like the artist is Azul Vaquero,
Mhm.
and I actually have a colorist, Avery Bacon, and I've got Lucas Gattoni as my letterer, who like he's been on so much stuff that's gotten nominated for awards and stuff. Like I can't
Yeah.
believe him. So it's like this has to be good, like just for my team.
Yeah, no, and I think it'll be really interesting because when this gets funded, it'll be really fun to see. I hope, especially for you, the response people give you towards it.
It would be nice. I would love that.
And so with your rewards, because everybody knows with Kickstarters, we're all like, what are we going to get if we back things? What kind of went into designing the reward tiers?
So I knew you obviously have to have your basic digital and physical from the research I did, from what I've read. Just I didn't want to exclude anyone who you maybe didn't have money to get the physical and get it shipped nowadays, because I know the holidays are coming up, money's tight. So, but I also wanted there to be option for people who did want a little bit extra. So like that's why there's the $40 tier where you can get a character print of one of the three main characters. You can get them all three for $75, just so you can get a little bit extra. I love getting prints. I have a binder that I collect the ones I get from Kickstarters, and just so I can like pull it out and look at it every once in a while.
Yeah.
Art. What's probably a little different about mine is at the $100 tier, I like to do hand-drawn lettering, and I put markers too for poetry, or I did one for a recipe for a zine. So that's what I'm offering 3 of those. That's all I can handle. They take a long but I like to play with different fonts with pencils and inks, and then like I do all the coloring with markers, and I do try to actually do some shading to make it look 3D and professional. So you can pick one of those up $100, and then for $200, I've got a scene in That Everlasting Peace where one of the main characters, Captain Rattle, gets jumped by a group of aliens. So for $200, you could be one of those 2 aliens.
Be an alien that does the jumping or gets jumped.
It does the jumping.
You get to do the jumping. It's like a trampoline park on page. Who doesn't want that?
And you get to get beat up by an awesome lesbian. So, win-win.
Oh, that's the dream. Sold. Take my money, Luke. Sold.
But other than that, one thing I will note with the tiers too is because my cover artist Donna, she's from Ireland, and one of my artists Fern, he's from England. So I do have a thing going. If you are an international backer, I will automatically bump you up a tier, because shipping is a nightmare to send overseas. I get it; it doubles the pledge almost. So I just don't want you to feel like any international backers missing out if they because I want this book to get as many people as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally understand that. And it's always nice to see when creators like you are willing to go the extra mile as you can as well to, help, us get the books and to help get what we are wanting and also meet us somewhere. So that's really awesome of you to do that extra mile, because 1, not all creators can do it even if they want to. And 2, some creators just don't want to do that, Right.
And it's just, I wanted to keep it balanced because obviously I can't bite $30 in shipping just out of my pocket, but I also don't want to completely screw over anyone who's a European or any other country who might be interested in this book,
Yeah, absolutely. Accessibility matters. We got representation, we got accessibility, we've got everything in this book, guys. Everything is here.
Those things are important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is there anything about the campaign that we haven't talked about yet?
I guess we haven't talked about 2 of the other stories, so I can go through those real quick.
We can.
So I'm trying to think which one comes next. I think it's Deceiving Appearances. So I don't have any art for that one yet, but I will soon. That one's going to be drawn and colored by Fern Lamb with letters by Kevin Lentz, who did the logo for the cover as well. That one's going to follow a character named Dart, who they defeat this massive, awesome, magical monster. It's a fantasy story, and to get this item that they're tasked with getting, and when they get it, they realize that it is a battle axe that is made out of butterfly wings.
Oh, wow! That's like, how do you put those together?
So it's kind of inspired by the Soul Calibur games. It was either that or they had, I think it was Soul Calibur, but they had a bonus where you could buy new weapons in the game, but one of the things you could buy at the end was a gag weapon. So like the guy who fought with a staff would be fighting with a feather duster, or someone would be fighting with a wooden training sword instead of the real sword. So they purposely had drawbacks too. So if you chose to fight with this weapon, you were like purposely handicapping yourself. So it's kind of inspired by that. The story was originally going to be, there was going to be a twist that it was in a video game the whole time, but then I realized that kind of really took away from Dart and like their journey through like having to deal with this battle axe that's made of a butterfly wing. Because this thing like compels them to use it, like they have to fight with this thing.
Yeah, That's I really like the style of games and silliness like that, where it's like, yeah, you're purposely handicap yourself, but have fun with like a fork or whatever in the world it is.
Yeah, fight with a giant spatula. Just you pick your poison. So that's kind of deceiving appearances in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, that everlasting piece, it's a sci-fi romance story. It was originally pitched to a sci-fi romance anthology and didn't get picked up. But it's kind of, I've been describing it as a gay Princess Bride.
Oh, nice.
It's about a son coming to their mother and saying, like, hey, Mom, how do you know you're in love? Which I'm a parent too. And just like, that's a super difficult question to answer just right off the front.
Mm-hmm.
But so she decides to tell her son about how you know you're in love with something through telling the story of Captain Rattle and her ship Theo. So that pictured there is Captain Rattle. That's the original character design from artist named Lee Coligiacomo. And Captain Rattle is like this, butt-kicking smuggler in space.
Mm-hmm.
And just the more that she does her job, her precious ship Theo, who may or may not be named after her lover,
of course,
it's more and more damaged to the point where it has been repaired with used parts, different parts, and it's completely unrecognizable. So the story kind of asks, like, can you still be in love with someone or something even when it's completely different from when you two began?
I like that. That's a really good theme.
The question, how do you know you're in love?
Yeah, it's, oh my gosh, that's hard even just if another adult asks you. I mean, it's hard enough if your child asks, but then like, even if another adult, your friend asks you, it's kind of like, well, I don't know what answer I'll give you. Like,
right. And yeah, I kind of drew experience from this from a kind of a short essay I wrote that was just something I just wrote for me that was kind of exploring this topic too. There's also a little bit of the ship of Theseus in there with, the ship being made and cobbled together from completely different parts now. So it's just drawing all these things I love together to make a good story, I hope, that also explores a cool question.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the sound of that. Man, you're getting me so excited to read all these stories because I really like how you bring all these like big, like real world themes into all these different genres, because that's really hard to do. There's some people that really go with fantasy, some sci-fi, some, realistic fiction, but you're really attacking all of these genres with these themes.
Right. It's just, yeah, as a writer for Comic Book Yeti, like one of the reasons I got into doing reviews and is I love breaking down stories and genres and just finding out what parts have which purpose and where they work where, and I like finding new ways to build on them and find new ways to explore them. So like, I'm not a big world building person. If you've read any of my stuff, like I'm not someone who's going to develop the economic system or like out of the world I create, unless it is important to the story, and then I'll usually throw it in the dialogue for like a sentence.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think it's good, your strong suits and what you want to focus on. Because I personally think a lot of writers in particular, sometimes, especially when, say, when they get bigger or what have you, and they're getting thrown all these opportunities, they're like, well, I'm more character based, but they want me to build a world. I guess I'll try it. And, of course you can do new things and still excel, but there are some people that I'm like, if you know your niche, stay with it. If you're really good at building characters, focus on that. Do what you feel comfortable with, and you still feel you can excel at while being slightly challenged. So that's really great. I think that's awesome that, hey, this is what I like to write, and this is what I want to really become the best at. So I am super excited to see it all come to fruition. Those of you watching and listening, you've got Sparks Volume 1 on Kickstarter right now. I'll make sure the link for all of that is in the description below. So if you're super lazy like me, you can still just do a couple clicks and you've backed it. Just like 3 or 4 clicks. That's all. That is all you have to do, guys. Like, you can think really hard if you want, or just click blindly. I'll be fine. But yeah, anything else you want to touch on with Sparks, Luke, before we get out of here?
No, just please back it if it interests you. There is going to be a volume 2 should this one be successful, and I've got bigger plans for that one. So help me keep this series going.
Awesome. I completely agree. Well, where can people find you, Luke? Plug yourself away, plug your work, plug your website if you have one, anything you'd like.
No problem. So you can pretty well find my website. It's a link tree, whatever it is, linktr.ee/Luke W. Henderson. That's where you can find my portfolio and my writing for Comic Book Yeti, Gatecrashers, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm on Twitter at Luke W. Henderson M, because at Luke W. Henderson has already been taken by someone with 10 followers. Same with my Instagram at Luke W. Henderson M, and I'm also on TikTok at Luke W. Henderson, where I do silly shenanigans.
I love it. I love it. TikTok is the hardest thing, I feel like, to really break into and get a feel for. Because like once you scroll and you understand it, you're like, oh, I can do this. It's easy. Because I have a TikTok too, and like every time I try to do something, I'm like, this takes a lot more work than I thought it would. Like,
right? You wouldn't think
you'll do this all day.
Right? You wouldn't think a 1-minute video takes you 2 hours to make, but sometimes it does.
It does, especially if you add in like transitions or different locations. Yeah, it's over for you.
Yeah.
Well, I am super excited. I know it is definitely not over for Sparks because the Sparks are lit. Everybody, again, go back it, go check it out. Feel free to find Luke on social media and let them know when you back. I know that would give Luke so much joy if they were tagged in a bunch of things saying they backed it. And then feel free to make sure you check out our show's Twitter as well at NBHD Comic Show. But at the end of the day, back with Kickstarter Sparks on Kickstarter now. And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time in the neighborhood.